Now, the hold on senior military nominations. Defense readiness is impossible without military commanders in place to execute our national defense strategy. Senators have regularly worked together to confirm routine military nominees quickly, ensuring no lapses in the work of our military. But right now, 160 military promotions, 160. These are non-political. These are men and women who have worked their way up through the ranks and deserve promotion to general, to colonel, etc. But 160, including 5 three-star generals, are on hold because the senior senator from Alabama is holding them up because he can't get his way on blocking 160,000 women within the military from receiving health care. Blocking military choices is unprecedented, hasn't happened before, and it could weaken our national security. And the number of those who are blocked is going to grow even larger as new nominees are reported out of the committee, which they do regularly. Among the general and flag officers on hold by the senator from Alabama include commanders for U.S. naval forces in the Pacific, the Middle East, and the U.S. military representative to the NATO Military Committee, something really important at a time when war rages in Ukraine. The commanders of the 5th and 7th Fleet are the commanders of U.S. naval forces confronting the likes of Iran and China. They are being held up single-handedly by the senator from Alabama. It shouldn't have to be said, but the senator from Alabama's hold on hundreds of routine military promotions is reckless. It damages the readiness of our military and puts American security in jeopardy. Now look, all of us feel very strongly, passionately, at times about certain political issues, certainly as strongly as the senator of Alabama feels about this one. But if every single one of us objected to the promotion of military personnel whenever we feel passionately or strongly about an issue, our military would simply grind to a halt. The senator from Alabama's actions risk permanently politicizing the confirmation of military personnel for the first time ever, and that would cause immense damage to the military's ability to lead and protect us. I can't think of a worse time for a MAGA Republican to pull a stunt like this, as threats against American security and against democracy are growing all around the world. I urge members of his own party to prevail on the senator from Alabama to stand down in this unprecedented and dangerous move and allow these critical, non-political, non-partisan military nominees to go through. On Medicaid and the budget. Today, the governor of North Carolina is signing legislation to expand Medicaid eligibility, following the passage of a bipartisan compromise through the North Carolina General Assembly last week. Once signed, as many as 600,000 North Carolinians will soon enjoy health care coverage previously denied to them. House Republicans should follow the example of their state-level counterparts and work with Democrats to expand services like Medicaid, not cut them. They should join Democrats to strengthen health care for all Americans, not threaten extreme cuts like the House GOP has been doing for months. In the American Rescue Plan, Democrats passed a major new incentive to get holdout states to expand Medicaid to cover its low-income citizens. We should build on this work. Now, House Republicans have bent over backwards, claiming Social Security and Medicare are off the table. But what are their plans for Medicaid? Republicans have been disturbingly evasive about whether or not they want to cut Medicaid, and so Americans, unfortunately, remain in the dark. If a moderate state like North Carolina is expanding Medicaid with bipartisan support, what the heck are MAGA Republicans doing threatening to cut it? It shows how difficult it will be for House Republicans to put together a plan that gets 218 votes. So we repeat, Leader McCarthy, today's March 27th. It's nearly 3 months. Where is your plan? Is Medicaid on the GOP chopping block? Are the MAGA Republicans pulling the Republican Party here in the Senate, here in the House rather? Further to the right, even as North Carolina, a moderate state, in a bipartisan way passes legislation to expand Medicaid, will tens of millions of Americans find out that their benefits will be curtailed or eliminated? Let me say again, instead of obsession about ideological spending cuts that harm millions of people, Republicans should work with Democrats to strengthen vital health care services. And we should do that while also agreeing to lift the debt ceiling together, without brinksmanship or blackmail or hostage-taking. Productive, enthusiastic. We spent a lot of time on implementation, which is going really well. In fact, I met yesterday with Natalie Quillian, and she is the Deputy Secretary, Chief of Staff in charge of implementation. So we talked a lot about that and other things, and it was a great meeting. I want to thank Senators Reid and Blumenthal and Hirono for joining me today. So first on McCarthy and the debt ceiling. So this morning, Speaker McCarthy did an interview demanding to sit down with President Biden to negotiate a debt ceiling. Yet to date, after constant requests, Speaker McCarthy has yet to produce any type of plan detailing what specific cuts he wants in raising the debt ceiling. Today he said, what about $4 trillion in cuts? Well, what are they? A number is not a plan, especially a number that's so vague and amorphous that he doesn't name anything specific at all. So, you know, if they were to sit down, you'd have to ask yourself, what are Speaker McCarthy and President going to talk about? The weather? Without a plan. We have a plan. We want to pass the debt ceiling without hostage-taking, without brinksmanship, and just get it done like we've done under both Presidents Trump and Biden. They still don't have a plan. If Speaker McCarthy truly has a plan, then lay it out. This isn't about a number. It's about having details, facts, simply put, a plan. And at a time when our country needs a solution, the Republicans in the House are giving us just brinksmanship. We say back to Speaker McCarthy once again, because he hasn't advanced the ball one jot, show us your plan. The reason he doesn't want to do it, in my judgment, my humble judgment, because he can't get 218 votes for any plan. But the idea of saying what he said over and over again, let's meet, without a plan, doesn't advance the ball forward one bit. We have a plan, they don't. Okay. Now, on the military generals, which is what we're mainly here to talk about today. As some of you know, a very troubling situation is developing in the Senate. One senator, just one single senator, my colleague from Alabama, Senator Tuberville, is blocking all general and flag officer confirmations, taking our military, our national security, our safety hostage. For years, years and years and years, both parties have worked together to quickly confirm the routine promotions of generals and flag officers without partisan bickering, without needless delay. It's important to be clear that Tuberville is not just blocking a targeted group of nominees. He is blocking all senior military officer promotions, creating a ripple effect, severely hindering our military's work in critical areas like Pacific and the Middle East. Our general to NATO, he's one of the people he's blocking at a time when we have a war with Putin in Ukraine. It's just horrible what he is doing. One member is blocking all of these people. Now, it's very simple. The senior senator from Alabama wants to make personal health care decisions for the women of our military. Not only does Senator Tuberville want to control the decisions women in the military make about their own health, he's willing to hurt our troops and our country to do so. Now, you know, couldn't get that stuck together. Here we go. So the senator from Alabama clearly risks permanently injecting politics into confirmation of routine military promotions, something risking our national security. And for what? so he can push the MAGA hard line on blocking women's choice, which the vast majority of women and all Americans do not support? That's beyond the pale. And let's be clear, the senator from Alabama's delay has been for months. It's reckless. It puts our security in general. Among the 160 nominees include 5 three-star generals, commanders for U.S. naval forces in the Pacific and the Middle East, areas we're confronting China and Iran, respectively, and, as I said, the U.S. military representative to the NATO Military Committee. I know, he's saying, I feel passionately about this issue. Members often feel passionately about issues. I do. Every one of us here does. But you don't. If every senator who felt passionately held up all of our appointments to the military, our military would collapse. Collapse. Plain and simple. So, the obstruction is dangerous for our national security. I urge my Republican colleagues on the other side, a few of whom have already spoken out, to prevail on the senator from Alabama that what he is doing is very damaging to America, to our military, to our security, and not really fair to these general officers who've worked their way up and have schedules of promotions and then get delays for no reason that their fault. So as we wrap up this work session, I want to turn to Senator Reid, our chair of the Armed Services Committee, to further elaborate on this. Thank you, Chair. Next, on women's rights and veterans' rights. For weeks, the senior senator from Alabama has threatened American security by blocking over 180 routine military promotions because he objects to women in the military accessing reproductive care. Yesterday, the senator from Alabama's objections came before the Senate for consideration through a resolution that would have eliminated reproductive care for our veterans and their families. Senator Tuberville lost the vote. Senator Tuberville lost while our women veterans won. Yesterday's vote made 2 things very clear. First, MAGA Republicans are so hell-bent on eliminating reproductive choice that not even veterans and our generals are safe. Americans have made abundantly clear that they reject the hard rights, anti-choice agenda, but MAGA Republicans still double down. Second, the Senate has now spoken on Senator Tuberville's anti-choice proposal and said no. One of the few instances where a CRA has been voted down in the Senate, and in this case, with bipartisan votes against it. The Senate has spoken. Senator Tuberville has zero excuse for blocking 180 military promotions. His objection has been presented, considered, and rejected on a bipartisan basis. He should drop his holds against our military personnel and move on. I urge my Republican colleagues who care about our national defense and about our veterans to talk some sense into our colleague from Alabama so he can drop his dangerous holds.
Leader Schumer, would you put a clean debt ceiling bill on the floor if they pass this bill in the House?
Look, the bottom line is simple. Our plan has always been the same: to avoid default, to pass a clean debt ceiling, no brinksmanship, no hostage-taking. Once that is done, there'll be plenty of time to discuss, as usual, in the budget process, where there should be cuts, where there should be tax increases, et cetera.
So
yes?
Is that a yes?
Senator Manchin called for talks with the Democrats on Republicans on the bill. Some House Democrats are calling for that already. If this passes and more Democrats start to come out and say, look, we got to get in a room and figure this out, what do you do?
Our caucus is unified. The president is unified, and his group is unified. Hakeem Jeffries and the Democratic House members are unified. Clean debt ceiling. Clean debt ceiling. That's how it's always been done. It was done 3 times, twice under Trump and once under Biden. To tie the two together is reckless and will lead to default. Yes.
Senator Manchin this week threatened to repeal the Inflation Reduction Act. Are you comfortable with that kind of language from a member of your caucus?
Look, the bottom line is our caucus is overwhelmingly for the Inflation Reduction Act. Yes. I spoke with Senator Feinstein recently, and both she and I hope that she will be back very soon.
Leader Schumer?
Yes.
Leader Schumer. Thank you. So the president has signed a national, signed a measure to end the COVID national emergency. He's even said that the pandemic is over. What Senate Democrats at the very least be willing to take back unspent COVID funds in order to say that?
Look, the bottom line is the president did the right thing by setting I think it was a May 11th deadline. And the bottom line is very simple, and that is that any discussions like these types of things should occur in budget discussions, not as part of default. Tying the two, as we've always said, is reckless. We think what Speaker McCarthy and the House have done is going to bring us closer to default, not further away from it. Last one.
Republicans say that Tommy Tuberville just wants a vote on DOD abortion policy, and then he'll lift his hold on these 184 military promotions. Why not just give him a vote?
Well, what Tommy Tuberville is doing is reckless, holding up the lives and the progress of men and women who have served in our military for a very, very long time. This is unique what he is doing. If he does it and then everyone else does it, it's going to lead to total chaos with the military and damage our national security, and we won't stand for it. Thank you, everybody. Cap. Well, 66 to 30. That's the final count of yesterday's vote to repeal the Iraq AUMFs of 2002 and 1991. A bipartisan success, years in the making. That was a very good moment here on the floor yesterday. A sign that senators on both sides want to see bipartisanship continue in this chamber. We can see it again if members work together on issues that Americans care about, like lowering costs, preserving America's competitiveness, and in yesterday's case, stopping endless wars in the Middle East. It's my hope Mr. President, it is my hope that the AMFU repeal can be a model, a blueprint for how the Senate operates in the coming years. It's not easy, but it's very much possible, and I thank my Republican colleagues, particularly Senator Young, for their cooperation. AUMF repeal was the conclusion of a successful, busy work period, 5-week work period that we just completed in the Senate. A busy and successful 5-week work period on and off the floor. We confirmed another 14 highly qualified judicial nominees to lifetime appointments to the bench, 13 district and 1 circuit court judge, bringing our total to 119 new judges. 119 new judges. That makes us proud under President Biden. I also want to recognize our committee chairs for their good work over the past month or so, holding a number. There was hearing after hearing, day after day, on important issues that Americans care about, like rail safety, the health of our banks, the rights of working Americans, the president's budget, and more. The Senate will hit the ground running when we return from the April state work period by taking up the much-needed Fire Grants and Safety Act. It's my hope that yesterday's 96-0 vote in favor of moving forward portends for swift action, argues very strongly against dilatory tactics. Let's do the same thing we did on AUMF. We're willing to allow some amendments, but we've got to move forward. This is something that is supported broadly, as shown by the 96-0 vote. Just this week, 29 fire and emergency service groups warned Congress that with summer around the corner, local fire departments of all kinds are woefully understaffed, underfunded, and under-equipped to meet their obligations to keep people safe. So, when we return, the Senate must move quickly to pass fire grants legislation without unnecessary delays to this overwhelmingly bipartisan legislation. Now, the senator from Alabama is holding up military nominations. The senator from Alabama continues his hold on more than 180 now promotions, military promotions, blatantly ignoring many warnings of the harm he is causing to our national security. It's reckless. It's just reckless. Yesterday, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin warned that blocking these promotions, quote, creates a ripple effect through the force that makes us far less ready than we need to be. Do you hear that, Senator from Alabama? The Secretary of Defense is saying that what you do makes us far less ready than we need to be at a time when China and Iran and Russia are all causing all kinds of security problems and threats. But Secretary Austin also emphasized another point, very important one. The senator's stonewalling is having consequences, bad consequences, heart-wrenching consequences for our military families. By blocking these promotions, the senator from Alabama is blocking pay raises for these officers and their families. By blocking these promotions, the senator from Alabama is blocking military kids from starting new schools, setting them back in their education. When a member of the military serves, their family serves too. Does the senator from Alabama understand the disruption and chaos he is causing to military families? These are people serving us. They're not political. They've worked hard. They've done a good job. They got a promotion. A promotion means moving, changes of venue, changes of school. It means a career path, how long you've been at one rank and then to another. The senator from Alabama is playing havoc with so many military families who are non-political, who have served our country well, who thought they were ready for promotion until this cruel act of the senator from Alabama stopped them. These military families have done nothing to deserve the disrespect and disdain shown by the senator from Alabama. It's insulting to our service members that one senator, just one, is holding up what has long been a routine and nonpartisan process. Again, I urge my colleague from Alabama to think this through and stand down. We understand he has passion on the issue. We disagree with it vehemently, so do most Americans. But passion on the issue is not an excuse for causing havoc in the military in terms of force and in terms of the lives of the families. And I would again plead with my Republican colleagues, whether it's public or private, to go to the senator of Alabama and dissuade him from his folly. On the budget and debt ceiling, and show us your plan. House Republicans are starting to see why. They themselves are starting to see why their attempts to threaten default to secure spending cuts was a terrible idea from the start. It's not only reckless, it's not only dangerous, it turns out they can't even follow through on it. This week, the chairman of the House Financial Services Committee admitted that he doesn't even see a path to an agreement for lifting the debt ceiling. And at least 16 Republicans have never voted to raise the debt ceiling at all, even under President Trump. That's true. But the problem here isn't that there isn't a path. Of course there's a path. It's staring Republicans in the face. The solution is what we Democrats have said from the start. Instead of threatening default, instead of brinksmanship, Republicans should work with us on a clean extension of the debt ceiling. We did it 3 times under Donald Trump. We've already done it under President Biden, and we should do it again. If Republicans want to push a separate discussion on the budget, that's their prerogative. And in fact, it has been done many times by both parties in the past. But the Republicans would be reckless to take the full faith and credit of the United States hostage in order to force a conversation on the budget, particularly when there's an alternative, tried and true path that has been used before. Separate debt ceiling and raising the ability of us to pay our debts and discussions on the budget, on taxes and on spending, which we always do. It's tying the two together that's reckless. And so it's becoming clearer and clearer to Republicans themselves, even those in the House, that the only legitimate path forward is this. Let's have a bipartisan and clean extension of the debt ceiling, as we've done many times before, and then Republicans can push a separate discussion on the budget. The American people have listened to us. A month and a half ago, I started telling the Republican leader, show us your plan. President Biden, Hakeem Jeffries, and many others have joined in that call. And it's resonating from one end of America to the other. Of course, you can't sit down and discuss something if you don't have a plan. Leader McCarthy just says, let's meet, but what are they going to do? Discuss the weather, the rearrangement of the furniture? Come on. Do it the right way. You're beginning to see what we have said all along, that the best way to do this is no hostage-taking, no brinksmanship on the debt ceiling, and a strong, avid, and passionate discussion on the spending issues, one separate from the other. The House Republicans cannot show us their plan, and as we said, they're going to have I predicted 2 months ago, a month and a half ago, it's going to be very hard for them to get 218 votes on any plan. So come on, look in the mirror, see what's going on, and do it the right way. Senator McCarthy, today is March 30th. It's been long enough. You still haven't come up with a single specific cut that makes any difference in debt that you want to do. Show us your plan. Drop the brinksmanship. Join Democrats on a clean extension of the debt ceiling. And finally, on H.R. 1, the House is expected today to vote on Republicans' partisan, unserious, and so-called energy package that they call H.R. 1. So first, once again, I want to make it clear, H.R. 1 is dead on arrival in the Senate. Not because of politics, but because it's so ridiculous and has been drawn up by a bunch of pro-oil senators of no regard for anything else. No Democrat has been consulted, so obviously the Republicans knew that in the House when they passed it. But they want to seem to go back, in H.R. 1, they go back to the MAGA supporters back home, the big oil companies, the oil wildcatters in so many of the oil states, who don't want to pay any taxes, who don't want anything to do with moving us forward as the climate gets worse and worse. The Senate is not going to waste our time on a bill that sets America back decades in our transition to clean energy. All it takes is a brief glance at H.R. 1 to realize it's just a giveaway to big oil. House Republicans' so-called energy package just guts important safeguards, environmental safeguards on fossil fuel projects. It would lock America into expensive, erratic, and dirty energy sources while setting us back more than a decade on our decision to move forward on clean energy, which this nation fully supports. Transmission, of course, is hugely important to increasing access on clean energy, but the Republican plan hardly even mentions it. So, again, the way to do this, Republicans in the House, is in a bipartisan way. We have a Republican House, we have a Democratic Senate. No party is going to be able to jam its way through without consulting the other side. That's true on debt ceiling, that's true on budget, and it's certainly true on H.R. 1. There are Republicans in the House and Democrats in the House. There are Republicans in the Senate and Democrats in the Senate who want to sit down and do a serious energy package. We need to do it. Let's stop this brinksmanship. Let's stop this political game playing. Let's stop this throwing bones to the MAGA hard right, which represents maybe 5% of America. Let's roll up our sleeves. Let's get down to work and get something done on energy and on so many other issues. I yield the floor. I yield the floor. Mr.
Let the chair do their thing.
Now, on the military holds, I want to talk for a moment about a profane and dangerous thing happening. The profane and dangerous things a colleague of ours recently said on the radio. For the past couple of months, hundreds of senior military officers and their families have held their lives unnecessarily put on hold because of the senator from Alabama. Senator Tuberville's actions are endangering our military readiness, provoking reaction not just from the current Secretary of Defense, but from seven former defense secretaries from both parties. And earlier this week, new comments of his came to light, where he not only doubled down on his obstruction, but also apparently bemoaned the military's efforts to root out white nationalism from our armed forces. Let me read the exchange with Senator Tuberville, because it's shocking. During the interview, the senator was asked, quote, "Do you believe the Defense Department should allow white nationalists in the military?" The senator's response, well, they call them that. I call them Americans. You believe that? Revolting. Utterly revolting. Does Senator Tuberville honestly believe that our military is stronger with white nationalists in its ranks? I cannot believe this needs to be said, but white nationalism has no place in our armed forces and no place in any corner of American society. Period. Full stop. End of story. I urge Senator Tuberville to think about the destructive spectacle he is creating in the Senate. His actions are dangerous. His words are gravely damaging. And his refusal to think about the consequences of his actions on our military personnel and families is a stain upon this chamber. Senators are called to a higher standard of conduct, but our colleague from Alabama is dragging all of us down. And for what? To push the hard rights party line on banning freedom of choice. Senator Tuberville needs to do two things. He needs to come out and state clearly and unequivocally that white nationalism is un-American. And he needs to drop his destructive holds on hundreds of our senior military leaders. This farce is endangering our national security, putting the lives of men and women who have served our country for decades in real trouble, and it needs to end. Now, I want to salute Jack Reed because he put together a very important letter which has been made public this morning. Leader McConnell and I received a letter from 7 former secretaries of defense, Democrat and Republican alike. They served under Democratic and Republican presidents, including Donald Trump, regarding the blanket holds by the senator from Alabama on the nominations of senior military leaders. The letters, signed by Secretaries Gates, Cohen, Panetta, Hagel, Mattis, Esper, and Perry, minces no words. The blanket holds are, quote, harming military readiness and risks damaging U.S. national security. Harming that military readiness and risks damaging U.S. national security. That's the assessment of former secretaries of state from both parties. That is the damage caused by the senator from Alabama. The secretaries of defense explained that these holds are preventing key leaders from taking important command positions, including leading the 5th Fleet in Bahrain, critical for keeping Iran in check, and the 7th Fleet in Pacific, critical for keeping the Chinese government in check. Let me read just one sentence from the letter. Quote, leaving these and many other senior positions in doubt at a time of enormous geopolitical uncertainty sends the wrong message to our adversaries and could weaken our deterrence. Senator Tuberville's holds are also affecting the next military representative to NATO, a post essential in allied efforts to support Ukraine. The future director of intelligence at U.S. Cyber Command is also impacted. I hope Senate Republicans read the letter and tell Senator Tuberville to drop these reckless holds. I urge all my Republican colleagues to impress upon Senator Tuberville the damage he is causing to our military, our people who have served for decades, and to our own national security at a time when we can't afford to drag our heels on national defense. All of us in the Senate have strong opinions on various topics, but that cannot justify putting our national preparedness at risk. Now on military holds. Mr. President, on another topic I cannot believe I must address yet again here on the Senate floor is that of military holds. Over the past few months, the senior senator from Alabama has single-handedly hindered our national security by blocking hundreds of critical military appointments. Those holds are hamstringing our military, according to former secretaries of defense who served presidents of both parties. This blanket hold is harming military readiness and risks damaging United States national security. But last week, the senator's conduct, as bad as it's been just by holding up these hundreds of general officers whose lives are in limbo, even though they've given decades of service to our country, who we depend on for our national defense, he's holding them up. But the senator went even beyond that. In an interview over the radio, Senator Tuberville was asked if white supremacists should be allowed in the military, to which he, a member of the Armed Services Committee, responded by saying, quote, well, they call them that, I call them Americans. It's hard to believe he really said it, but check the record. He did. Revolting. Revolting down to the last word. The senator from Alabama's words were revolting to so many across this country. A few days later, when asked to clarify his views on the matter, where he was given a chance to make up for this awful mistake that will be a blot on his record forever, Senator Tuberville then responded with, quote, "What is a white nationalist?" As if it's some great mystery. What is a white nationalist? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me, Senator? Let me give my colleague a hint on how to define a white nationalist. The man who just over a year ago murdered 10 people at a top supermarket in Buffalo, seeking to murder black people, was a white nationalist. The insurrectionists who waved Confederate flags through the halls of the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, many of them were white nationalists. And sadly, some of those insurrectionists had military backgrounds. Again, what is a white nationalist? How about the parade of belligerents who carried torches through the streets of Charlottesville while screaming, "Jews will not replace us"? Senator Tuberville, those were white nationalists. And then he followed up by saying, I couldn't believe he said this, "I look at a white nationalist as a Trump Republican." Really? What the heck is happening in America? Leader McConnell cannot allow a member of his conference to make a mockery of our military and of the Senate, the way Senator Tuberville has done. If any of my Republican colleagues care whatsoever about the well-being of our military, they'll denounce the senator's words and urge him to drop his holds. Now on judges. Last week was a very productive week in the Senate for judicial nominees. The Judiciary Committee reported out 6 more nominees for lifetime appointments to the federal bench. We're continuing the work of confirming more outstanding judges this week, starting today. This afternoon, we'll vote to confirm Bradley Garcia as a circuit court judge for the highly important D.C. Circuit. After the Supreme Court, as everyone knows, the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals is the most important federal court in the country, particularly when it comes to government actions. And it takes up cases, of course, that the Supreme Court is unable to consider. The Supreme Court only takes up about 75 cases a year. And so the D.C. Circuit Court has many, many vital and important cases. The D.C. Circuit is often the final word on hugely consequential cases, particularly those involving the Congress and the executive branch. And I'm proud to say, once confirmed, Bradley Garcia will make history as the first Latino ever to serve on the D.C. Circuit since it was established in 1893. Latinos are historically underrepresented across the federal bench. So confirming the first ever Latino to the second most important court is a long overdue step towards making the federal bench better reflect our country. When it comes to confirming people to the federal bench, especially to the highly important, vital D.C. Circuit, it's imperative to get it right. And President Biden got it right with the historic nomination of Bradley Garcia. A graduate of Johns Hopkins and the Harvard Law School, Mr. Garcia has a wealth of public and private legal experience defending civil and human rights. He clerked for Supreme Court Justice Elena Kagan and rose to be a partner at a law firm before leaving to serve in the Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel. And Mr. Garcia, being of generous spirit, boasts an impressive pro bono record, advocating for clients in cases implicating the rights of immigrants, criminal defendants, women's reproductive freedoms, and free and fair elections. So I'm confident that Bradley Garcia will make an outstanding addition to the D.C. Circuit, joining the proud company of so many other Biden appointments who are, little by little, making our courts a better reflection of the population of the United States of America. Mr. Garcia received a bipartisan vote out of the Judiciary Committee. I'm proud to say that. I thank my Republican colleagues who voted for him. And I expect that bipartisan support to carry on to the floor this afternoon. I thank my colleagues on the other side of the aisle for working with us. And Senate Democrats, Mr. President, will continue making judicial confirmations one of our top priorities moving forward. We've made remarkable progress in our work to confirm good, mainstream, and diverse judges under President Biden, and we'll keep working towards that goal this week and beyond. I yield the floor and note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Baldwin.
Now, on white nationalism. For the past few months, the senior senator from Alabama has embarked on a one-man mission to excuse and even defend the meaning of white nationalism. He did it back in May when he bemoaned efforts in our military to root out dangerous white nationalism from our ranks. I call them Americans. Those were his words. His words. A week later, he was asked to clarify his comments, and here's how he replied. What is a white nationalist? You'd think he'd learn from the overwhelming negative reaction he's received from one end of the country to the other, that he would learn from that reaction and might maybe modify his comments. But no. Last night, given another chance to clear the air, he suggested that no, white nationalists aren't inherently racist, that yes, white nationalism is American, and that the definition of white nationalism is a matter of opinion. It's hard to believe that the senator from Alabama has to be corrected again. The senator from Alabama is wrong, wrong, wrong. The definition of white nationalism is not a matter of opinion. White nationalism, the ideology that one race is inherently superior to others, that people of color should be segregated, subjected, and relegated to second-class citizenship is racist down to its rotten core. And for the senator from Alabama to obscure the racist nature of white nationalism is indeed very, very dangerous. His words have power and carry weight with the fringe of his constituency, just the fringe. But if that fringe listens to him, excuse and defend white nationalism, he is fanning the flames of bigotry and intolerance. Last week, the gunman who killed 23 people in El Paso Walmart was sentenced to 90 life terms in prison. He was a self-described white nationalist. The man who murdered 10 people at the top supermarket in my home state of New York, in Buffalo, was a white nationalist. And if those examples aren't clear enough, let's not forget Charlottesville, where neo-fascists, alt-right radicals, and far-right militias paraded through the streets carrying torches and chanted, quote, "Jews will not replace us." Those were white nationalists. This isn't a joke. This is deadly serious stuff. And for a member of the United States Senate to speculate about what white nationalism means as if it's some benign little thought experiment is deeply and terribly disturbing. I urge my Republican colleagues to impress upon the senator from Alabama the destructive impact of his words and urge him to apologize. On military holds, the senior senator from Alabama, Senator Tuberville, is continuing his dangerous and reckless hold of hundreds of routine, non-political promotions of senior military officers. This morning, Senator Warren, Senator Reid, and I released a new letter from Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, detailing how the senator from Alabama's blankless holds pose a clear risk to our military readiness and directly impact and hurt military families. And since these are general officers, they've spent decades, they and their families, serving our country. Secretary Austin's letter confirms what Democrats have been saying for weeks. Senator Tuberville's indefinite hold on the confirmation of our general and flag officers is reckless, unprecedented, harmful to our military's readiness, and sends the wrong message to our partners and allies. In the letter, Secretary Austin warned that a prolonged blanket hold is creating unnecessary uncertainty in the chain of command that, quote, diminishes our global standing as the strongest military in the world. Let me say that again, it's so striking. The senator from Alabama's blanket hold is creating unnecessary uncertainty that, quote, diminishes our global standing as the strongest military in the world, unquote. Secretary Austin's letter also laid out how the senator from Alabama's hold is also harming our military families, preventing children from starting new schools and spouses from starting new jobs. That's shameful. hurting these generals and admirals' families in this unique attempt to try and get his way, which will not happen. Finally, Secretary Austin's letter highlighted that over the next several months there'll be hundreds more promotions requiring Senate confirmation, including Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Chief of Staff of the Army, Chief of Staff of Naval Operations, Commandant of the Marine Corps, Commander of U.S. Cyber Command, Director of the National Security Agency, and so much more. These are just some of the positions at risk of delay if the senator from Alabama keeps his reckless holds. Secretary Austin's letter follows a letter last week from seven former secretaries of defense, Democrat and Republican, served under Democratic and Republican presidents, stating that blanket holds are, quote, harming military readiness and risks damaging U.S. national security. And let's be clear-eyed about why the senator from Alabama is carrying out this reckless act. He's doing it to advance the extreme MAGA Republican agenda. He's doing it because he fundamentally doesn't believe women have the right to make their own choice. I hope Senate Republicans read Secretary Austin's letter, as well as the letter from the 7 former secretaries of defense, and prevail on the senator from Alabama to end this dangerous blockade and get our military operating to its full capacity. Destroying a Senate process that has been apolitical and pro forma throughout history should not fall a victim to MAGA Republican politics, and I thank Senator Warren and Reid for continuing to bring attention to this issue. I yield the floor.
We are not in a quorum.
Thank you.
The senator is recognized.
Thank you. First, Madam President, I want to reiterate a point I made yesterday about Senator Tuberville's military holds. The bottom line is very, very simple. Republican leaders and many of Senator Tuberville's Republican colleagues oppose what Senator Tuberville is doing because it puts at such serious risk our military preparedness, our military security, our national security. Very simply, the onus is on Republican senators to prevail on Senator Tuberville and get him to back off his reckless pursuit. That is the crux of the matter. It's on the back of his Republican colleagues to get Senator Tuberville to back off. It's hurting our military security. It's dangerous, unprecedented, and they have the power and the ability to stop him from doing it. Okay, questions? Go ahead, Matt.
Will you commit to holding a vote on the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff's nominee if this standoff with Pentagon persists?
The bottom line is this is a problem created by Republicans, and it's up to them to solve it. Senator McConnell, Senator Thune have said they disagree with Tuberville. It's now up to the Republican Party to get him in line. We're not going to shift the burden to Democrats when this is a Republican-caused problem. Next. Go ahead. I've had a conversation with Speaker McCarthy, and we had a good conversation. We agreed a CR is the best way to go. He's going to have a rough time implementing it, but I hope he sticks to his guns. And I think he knows, I think Leader McCarthy knows, that if a shutdown happens, it'll be caused by House Republicans. It'll be bad for the country, but it'll also be very bad for them.
Leader Schumer.
Yes.
Thank you, Leader Schumer. The UK Parliament just recognized Taiwan as an independent country. Should Congress do the same, or at least the Senate do the same?
No, I think that with the present situation is where we should stay. Yes. Yes, there was a hand there. Yeah, way back there. I would like to call on a new person there. Hi, new person.
So I wanted to get your thoughts on the fact that lawmakers in both the House and also in the Senate have voiced concerns about Senator McConnell and his health. Can you offer more thoughts?
Look, I'm very glad to see McConnell back. He's doing well. We're working together well, and I always wish him the best.
Leader Schumer.
Yes.
We have this one coming up on AI next week. Talk about your role in that as an area of your, are you getting closer to getting from members and sort of legislation that you think you can do on AI?
Okay, look, AI is one of the 2 or 3 most serious problems we face in the future, but it's also one of the 2 or 3 best opportunities we face in the future. So it's very, very important to both maximize the opportunities and the good that AI can do and minimize the harm, both of which are very large. Our forum is unique because this is such the inside forums that we've set up, and you can see that we have a very broad-based, balanced attendance of people who are experts, people who have AI systems in place, and critics. They're all coming together. And the idea is for all of us in the Senate to listen to their ideas and thoughts, for their facts and ideas to be the nutrient they are, and then our committees to go forward and move forward with legislation. We can't put our heads in the sand like ostriches. If we don't do anything, AI is going to move forward without us, and the dangers could be maximized and the opportunities could be minimized. And so this is going to be one of the most important sessions, if you will, that Congress has had. Why did we do it this way? Because it's so unique. It is broad and deep. It's going to affect every aspect of society. It is constantly changing, and it is very complicated. So I'm very, very pleased with how this has happened, and as everything else we're trying to do, or much else we're trying to do, we're doing it in a bipartisan way, and Senators Rounds and myself and Heinrich and Young have been working very hard all of August to put this forum together, and we think it'll do a lot of good. Yes.
Are you concerned at all that Republican calls for impeachment could get in the way of the budget negotiations?
The Republican calls for impeachment are absurd, and we're going to move forward and do our job here in the Senate of funding the government and doing the many other things that I listed in the dear colleague I sent that we need to do. Thank you, everybody.
Would you consider, or are you guys discussing any possible rules changes, either on a bipartisan basis or unilaterally, as Democrats, to deal with the Tuberville?
Look, the bottom line is this is a Republican problem. Don't pawn it off on us. It was created by Tuberville solely himself. And it's up to the Republicans to put pressure on him to back off, plain and simple. Now, we're already seeing that pressure mount. Last week, one of the major Republican candidates for Senate, Nikki Haley, said that Tuberville ought to back off. And just a few days ago, one of the most powerful and influential congressmen in the House, Congressman Call, said the same thing. The pressure is mounting. Tuberville should back off. What he's doing is disgraceful and solely his own causing. Don't pawn it off on us. Yes.
Is it a red line? Tuberville and Holds, is that to say that Democrats aren't going to negotiate with Tuberville? Because Mitt Romney and Dan Sullivan, for instance, say that you guys need to give some ground.
It's absurd, absurd. It's caused by Tuberville, solely by Tuberville. He has to back off. They should be telling Tuberville, and maybe they are, privately, that he should back off. Thank you. Now on Republican extremism. Mr. President, a lot has changed since I first arrived in Congress, but nothing more so than the seismic shift in the Republican Party's support for the members of our great armed forces. When I arrived in the House, Republican representatives used to fall over each other to give speeches expressing support for those in uniform. The same when I arrived in the Senate. Their policies didn't always match the rhetoric, but the support truly seemed real and genuine. It no longer does. Oh, some of them may still use the rhetoric, but these days the actions we see on the other side say more than all the patriotic rhetoric on earth. Look at where we are. In the House, the Republicans can't even agree to debate a bill to fund the Defense Department and the intelligence community. And they balk at providing emergency aid to a Democratic partner fighting off a Russian invasion. In the Senate, our Republican colleagues are more supportive of our Ukrainian friends, to their credit, but extremists in their ranks are blocking the promotion of hundreds of military leaders. And what does the Republican leadership do? Nothing. Tacit approval of this nakedly cynical tactic. They're shrugging their shoulders and letting it go forward. The result? Real lives families trapped in limbo because a select few want to push the MAGA hardline on women's choice. To my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, these service members, the finest our military has to offer, are seemingly just numbers on the Senate calendar. The Senate from Alabama claims no one is being harmed by his obstruction and that the leadership of his conference supports him. Well, I say to my friends, these are not just numbers. Our armed service members are real people who have dedicated their lives to serving, defending our great country. They are real families, spouses, children, whose lives have been put in limbo by the callous calculation of the senator from Alabama. Officers cannot assume their new assignments, spouses who cannot find jobs in new locations, families that cannot get settled in their new homes, kids who have to go to a new school, can't start it. The bottom line is this. This is a Republican problem. It was created by the senator from Alabama, no one else, and it's up to Republicans to put pressure on him to back off, plain and simple. We already see that pressure mount. Last week, one of the major Republican presidential candidates said that the senator from Alabama ought to back off. And just a few days ago, the House chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, one of the most respected conservative members of the House, said the same thing. But Senate Republican leaders need to step up. Here we are, yet here we are, with extremists of one party choosing to upend the lives of hundreds of dedicated and honorable military families. I will continue to find a way to break this logjam and get these lives back on track. I yield the floor. Note the absence of a quorum. Mr. President, for months, over 300 general and flag officer nominations have been indefinitely delayed because of the holds of the senior senator from Alabama, and the consequences are mounting. As war continues in the Middle East, the senator's holds have prevented the swift confirmation of the commander of the Navy's Fifth Fleet and the deputy commander of U.S. Central Command, both vital for our operations in that region of the world. The senator continues his holds even as U.S. troops in Iraq and Syria have been attacked 24 times in the last 2 weeks. At one point this summer, the senator's holds meant that for the first time ever, all three branches of the military operated simultaneously without confirmed leadership. And now the U.S. Marine Corps is suddenly without a leader due to illness. But because of the senator's holds, there is no number 2 in place to step in. And it will get much worse for our military if the senator continues his recklessness. The Pentagon says that by the end of this year, up to three quarters of the generals and admirals in the Defense Department will be affected by Senator Tuberville's holds. Let me say that again. The Pentagon recently estimated that by the end of this year, up to 3/4 of the generals and admirals in the Defense Department will be affected by Senator Tuberville's reckless holds. Patience is wearing thin on both sides of the aisle over the senator's antics. Last night, a group of our Republican colleagues tried to confirm many of our military nominees by consent. For 4 hours, late into the evening, our colleagues moved from one nominee to the other, and the senator from Alabama brazenly stood there and objected to each one. Democrats and Republicans alike have tried to reason with the senator from Alabama, offering him one solution for compromise after the other, but every step he has refused to cooperate. So, 2 days ago, Chairman Reid of the Senate Armed Services Committee introduced a resolution that will allow the Senate to quickly confirm the nominees currently being blocked by the senator from Alabama. This resolution was referred to the Rules Committee, and when the time comes, I will bring it to the floor of the Senate for consideration. If we can't solve this problem another way, we will all have to vote to move these nominees forward. We'll work with our Republican colleagues in good faith to move this resolution forward, because most of us want these holds on our military leaders to come to an end quickly. Our military deserves better. Our service members deserve better. Their spouses and their kids and their entire families deserve better. These holds must not continue. We'll work to move this resolution, and I hope to see bipartisan support so we can finally get these hundreds of nominees appointed to their posts. In the meantime, the Senate will move forward on 3 critical senior military nominees here on the floor. We'll vote to confirm the nomination of Lieutenant General Mahoney to be the second in command at the U.S. Marine Corps. As I mentioned, Lieutenant General Mahoney's confirmation has become a top priority for the Senate after the Commandant of the Marines, General Eric Smith, was unexpectedly hospitalized after a serious medical emergency. We pray for the General's recovery and for his family. We will also vote to confirm Admiral Lisa Franchetti to be the next Chief of Naval Operations. Admiral Franchetti's confirmation will mark a significant milestone in our military's history. Once confirmed, Admiral Franchetti will be the first woman ever to lead the U.S. Navy. I'm proud to say she's a Rochester, New York native, a graduate of Pittsford Mendon High School, and Admiral Franchetti is an exceptional leader with a distinguished career serving our nation. I'm confident she has the experience, the skills, and the vision to succeed as the U.S. Navy's top officer. Finally, we'll vote to confirm the nomination of General David Allen to be Chief of Staff of the U.S. Air Force. Both parties must work together to ensure that our military is fully staffed and fully equipped to defend the American people at any time, but particularly at this time of crisis. And that begins by confirming these vital nominations today. The senior senator from Alabama, Senator Tuberville, for more than 6 months has continued his brazen, reckless hold of hundreds of routine, non-political promotions of senior military officers. Democrats have said all along that these promotions should move forward together, as these nominations have for decades in the past. That they should have happened a long time ago. They should have happened the way these promotions have been done in the Senate until Senator Tuberville arrived. They should have been done quickly and in a bipartisan way. Instead, the senator from Alabama decided he would take the unprecedented step of holding up these promotions because he held a political position on abortion that doesn't have the votes to pass the Senate and is opposed by the Commander-in-Chief and the Secretary of Defense. This poorly conceived tactic has also been opposed by the Senate Republican leadership. Leader McConnell and Senator Thune have both voiced grave concerns about the path that Senator Tuberville has taken. And Speaker McCarthy, when asked about it this week, demurred and said, "I'm the Speaker of the House." Senator Tuberville's tactics have been opposed by top Republicans in Congress. It has been opposed by Republican presidential candidates, and it has been denounced by military families from one end of America to the other. It has been denounced by veterans groups. Polls show that the American people strongly oppose what Senator Tuberville is doing, and a recent poll showed that even 58% of Alabama voters believe Senator Tuberville should allow the promotions to go forward. Simply put, besides the most extreme elements of the Republican Party, no one thinks this is a good idea. And in the face of that opposition, it seems that Senator Tuberville is becoming more and more desperate to get out of the box he has put himself in. He's desperate to shift the responsibility onto others. But I've made it clear that we will not allow anyone to shift this onto Democrats. The blame falls squarely on the shoulders of the senior senator from Alabama. I offered to give him a vote to get the Department of Defense to do what he wants on abortion in the NDAA. He never took me up on that vote. when Democrats tried to move all the nominations because Democrats don't want to leave anyone in our military behind, Senator Tuberville objected. And now, in a further act of desperation, Senator Tuberville is seeking to use a procedural step to overcome his very own holds. Yes, you heard that right. Senator Tuberville is seeking to undo his own holds. The man who is holding everything up is trying to obfuscate things by playing this ruse on the floor. Senator Tuberville is essentially trying to make himself the gatekeeper of which officers are promoted and who sits and waits. Instead of just getting out of the way and allowing the Senate to approve the promotions that these decorated military officers deserve, the senator from Alabama, unfortunately and wrongly, is using them as pawns. What Senator Tuberville is doing will set the military and the Senate down a path to vote on every single military promotion. It will make every single military officer's promotion subject to the political whims of the Senate and even of one senator. It will change the nature of our non-political military. It will hamstring the Senate and further bog down this body and make it harder for us to legislate. It will take away time from appropriations. It will make it harder to get things done to benefit the American people. The decision by the senior senator from Alabama will have long-lasting repercussions that may not be apparent right away, but we may come to regret. I believe we will come to regret them. But due to the extraordinary circumstances of Senator Tuberville's reckless decisions, Democrats will take action. It's not the path the vast majority of senators on either side of the aisle want to go down, but Senator Tuberville is forcing us to confront his obstruction head-on. I want to make clear to my Republican colleagues, this cannot continue. We cannot continue down this path. It threatens the ability of the Senate and the leadership of both sides to work together to get things done for the American people. And it threatens the non-political nature of our military service members. Senator Tuberville's obstruction is pushing the Senate down this road, and where it goes from here will depend on all of us. The Senate runs on unanimous consent, and we depend on each other to ensure this institution functions smoothly. That's how we make things happen around here. If everyone objected to everything to get leverage for their pet priorities, it will grind this body to a halt. Either we choose a different direction, or we continue down the road of more and more obstruction. It is my hope, indeed it's my prayer, that we find a better way. Our military deserves better. We cannot allow Senator Tuberville to set the path on a path that no senator wants to travel. We cannot allow Senator Tuberville to decide which of our dedicated and brave service members get promoted and which get to languish, which military families are able to settle in their new posts, and which must remain in limbo. We cannot, we should not allow that to be the case. So I have just filed cloture on the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, and the Army Chief of Staff. These men should have already been confirmed. They should already be serving in their new positions. The Senate should not have to go through procedural hoops just to please one brazen and misguided senator. But this is where we are. In the end, the Senate will overwhelmingly vote to overcome Senator Tuberville's blockade of these three nominees by voting for cloture. Then the Senate will overwhelmingly vote to confirm them, and these three honorable men will finally be able to assume their positions. And the abortion policy that Senator Tuberville abhors will remain in place. Senator Tuberville will have accomplished nothing. But the harm he is doing to the military and their families remains, and unfortunately continues for hundreds of others. For the information of all senators, now that I have filed these motions, I will request consent to collapse the time and hold these votes later this afternoon. I hope Senator Tuberville does not object. But if he does, senators should expect votes on Friday and possibly Saturday to finish consideration of these nominations. Again, I will shortly move to speed up the votes on these amendments to this afternoon, and I hope the senator will not object, but if he does, we'll stay till we get them done. Finally, Senator Tuberville's unprecedented disrespect to the men and women who lead our military has unsurprisingly, caused many of our colleagues to discuss the ways to change the way we process military nominations. They recognize that the Senate process is being abused and that Senator Tuberville's reckless actions are harming hundreds of military families. Once again, I wish we were not in this position. I wish my Republican colleagues who do care deeply about keeping our military strong were able to prevail on Senator Tuberville to completely change his tactics. They clearly made some progress, which forced him to vainly attempt a procedural play. But, Mr. President, Madam President, this is not a sustainable path. Senator Tuberville's continued abuse of his privilege will continue to disrupt the lives of hundreds of our nation's finest and most dedicated military officers and their families. And while we Democrats didn't choose this fight, we are ready to put an end to this sooner rather than later. Now, on a different subject, the minibus and the vote that just occurred. The outcome of this vote on the minibus is wholly disappointing and undermines months of hard work appropriators have done to move appropriation bills through the regular order. Senators Murray and Collins have done Herculean work, as have the members of their committee. Democrats have worked cooperatively with Republicans on every step of this process. We've pursued regular order. We're willing to allow votes on amendments, and we're partnering with the colleagues on the other side of the aisle to bring this minibus to the floor. Senate Republicans have asked us to work with them, and we have worked with them. And until now, we were making progress. But now, a few select Republicans who seem to think they're members of the House Freedom Caucus have thrown a wrench into the process, and for no other reason than the pursuit of gridlock itself. So the outcome here is disappointing. But it is not the end of the process. I filed a motion to reconsider this vote. Democrats want to reach an agreement with our Republican colleagues that will pass the minibus and make up the time lost because of Senator Johnson's obstruction. My Democratic colleagues and I will do our very best to get the minibus done. We have come very far, and there's no good reason for us to turn back now. And with that, I yield the floor to the great Senate Pro Tem, Chair of the Appropriations Committee, my friend and colleague, the senior senator from the great state of Washington, Ms. Patty Murray.
Madam President.
Senator from Washington.
Thank you, Madam President. I thank the Majority Leader. Madam President, let's be clear. The three bills in that package are
on military holds. It's now been 9 months since Senator Tuberville began his reckless hold on hundreds of military promotions. Frankly, Madam President, patience on both sides of the aisle, is wearing very, very thin. Every day, Senator Tuberville continues his reckless blockades of military promotions. America's national security pays the price. Our military readiness pays the price. Military families, spouses who need to start new jobs, and children who need to start into schools pay the price. It's the responsibility of Senate Republican colleagues to importune Senator Tuberville to stand down, let these military nominees go through, and tell him to start putting his hard-right political demands ahead of America's national security. I know some Republicans have been trying to work with Senator Tuberville over the past week to find some last-ditch solution, but he seems to remain ironclad in his stubbornness. So tomorrow, the Senate Rules Committee, led by Senator Klobuchar, will mark up a resolution allowing the Senate to quickly confirm the promotions currently blocked by Senator Tuberville. I thank my colleagues and Chair of Armed Services Committee, Senator Reid, for his work on this resolution. If Senator Tuberville continues his blanket holds on military nominations, if he won't even listen to members on his own side of the aisle, I will bring Senator Reid's resolution to the floor for a vote as soon as possible. That way we can end Senator Tuberville's farce and quickly confirm the over 350 military promotions, people who've served their country long and well. We can finally move them to their rightful promotions. I yield the floor. Note the absence of a quorum.